Welcome to Reigniting You, the show that explores a variety of topics and timely issues for making successful mid to late career transitions with a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment for the next phase of your career and life, regardless of your age. Now, here's your host, Lisa Downs.
Welcome to Reigniting You, where we talk all things career transition for those age 40 plus. I'm your host, Lisa Downs, Seattle-based career and retirement transition coach. Great to be here with you today, and our producer, Eric. Hey, Eric, how's it going today?
It's going pretty good.
Good. Well, happy December as we barrel here toward the end of 2021 already.
That's right. And the holidays are upon us.
That's right. Hard to believe. Already here. The year has seemed to zoom by.
Thanksgiving and Hanukkah has already
happened.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, we've got another great show on tap for today. My guest is succession planning consultant Laurie Nichols, and we'll talk with Laurie a bit later in the show. First, though, are a few listener questions from the last few weeks. So Don in Federal Way asks, how can I go about building my network to launch a new business when I worked at the same place for 30 years and was focused on that? Well, thanks, Don, for that question. Number of different ways you could go here. And I'm glad you asked this because so often those of us who have been in long-term careers, especially if it's been in the same organization or same industry, probably haven't focused much on building our external network necessarily. So when the focus has been internal for so long, it's understandable. And really appreciate you asking that, especially for becoming a new business owner. So a few ideas for you. Primarily, my recommendation would be to look for different professional associations or groups to get involved with and potentially join. It's really, that's a process of trial and error. So, if you can think of it, chances are there's a professional association for pretty much any type of business or industry. So I would encourage you to look at that with an eye toward, who is in your ideal target market in terms of potential clients for your business, or who could be good referral partners for you, and then finding out where those folks hang out. So it might be something like a Rotary or a networking group, or it could be an association that's tied to a specific industry. But that would be an idea. You also may want to, make sure that you're becoming active on social media, primarily LinkedIn. Can you start posting? Can you connect with people? Maybe comment on posts. That's a good way to start gaining more visibility on LinkedIn, even if you're not much of a writer or don't, have trouble coming up with content. You can always comment on other people's posts and share articles and what you come across. That's a good way to boost your profile. You could also, if you like to write or like to speak, that's another avenue. So you could contact different associations that have publications or have blogs on their website around different topics and see if it makes sense to pitch an article to them or potentially, do some guest posting. You could also, look to speak for different organizations. Many nonprofits and associations are always looking for people to present at their events, whether that's in person or a lot of them virtual these days. And that's another good way to get the word out and really start building your network. But, I'm a believer that even these days in the age of social media, it's still all about connections and relationship. And so what are those groups or avenues that will help you build those relationships so people will refer business to you? So hope that's helpful. Another question comes to us from Emmy in Yakima, who asks, how can I keep focused on finding a next job when the process is frustrating and I keep getting rejected after applying and interviewing? Well, thanks for that, Emmy. It's certainly no fun. Been there many a time. It can be frustrating, and especially when, resumes can go into a black hole seemingly and you don't hear anything, or, you maybe get some early interviews and then it doesn't materialize, or you don't go deeper into the process. So I appreciate the situation you're in, and it is definitely frustrating. So, sometimes it might make sense to do something. It's kind of a bridge situation, bridge position, something temporary. So, what could be maybe some contract work or some gig work that could be a stopgap measure that brings in some income and allows you a bit of flexibility to keep pursuing finding your next full time work situation. That could be an option. It kinda goes back to Don's question around networking, but, volunteer work is always a good thing to focus on. So if you have some hours you can devote each month, look for volunteer opportunities, whether it's joining a board or on a committee or helping out with planning an event or a particular project that they might need help with. That's always a good way to, again, kind of get the word out, and for people to get to know you in terms of your skill set and what you can do. We tend to gravitate to those people we know, like, and trust. So how can more people get to know you and see what you can do? And the key with, job search is really, as with many things, it's really about being consistent. So, how can you be consistent? Just making sure that each and every week you're consistent with doing job search activities. So, whether that's connecting with other people, whether it is, going to events, participating, applying for jobs, updating cover letters, resumes, talking to people. But as long as you're consistent, that tends to help too and can help with focus. So thanks for that. So Eric, our first question was from a new business owner. So, what do you look for? So, what attracts you to working with a certain business or buying someone's service or supporting a business?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like I don't feel like I've got the professional network when it comes to using services that I would love. I would love to just, know a contractor that was a friend of mine and go, "Oh, I know them. I can trust them." Like kind of like, the small town ideal, but
Yeah.
in reality that there's so much competition and there's so many companies out there, and we live in a populous place, so that's not a real reality.
Yep.
So I typically go for the internet and look for those reviews. And, I'm usually not turned off if I see one or two negative reviews because I'm sure if people were writing reviews about me, there'd be one or two negative reviews just because
Yeah.
you can't please everybody all the
Right.
time. But,
Yeah.
if the majority of them are positive, then I think, okay, there probably was some misunderstandings with those other people. And like I said, you can't please everybody all the time. So typically I do look for those reviews online, and I try and look for from various sources too, because
Yeah.
there's so many like review sites, and we've heard so much about people faking reviews and that sort of thing. So I think it's a good idea to kind of go across platforms and use your Google and use your Yelp and anything that you can find like that is helpful. And also just when I reach out, do they reply in a timely manner?
Mhm.
And do they, try their best to answer the question that I've posed? Or do they, refer me to call in and we can talk about this? So it's one of those things,
Yeah.
I realize it's like, they're trying to, not they're trying to be able to give an in-depth answer, which a phone call would do better than an email, but I need something to know that these people know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, same here. And I rely on my network a lot. So, I'll
Yeah.
put it out to um, my friends and colleagues and say, "Hey, I'm looking for this. Who do you know?" And kind of go that referral route. And especially if it's something that's like a medical service or
Yeah.
something that's really, personalized. You want to make sure you're going to a good um, place for that and to get people's recommendations too.
That's a
So,
good idea, and I should do that more. You know, sometimes I just worry about, I don't know why, but putting things out there on social media sometimes, and that's the most efficient way to get feedback
yeah.
on stuff is putting it out on social media. But sometimes I think people just get distracted by a
I
question
think
and start
so.
answering questions that aren't there, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But I just want quick, to the
Yeah.
point kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But you take the good with the bad, I
That's
guess.
right. That's right. Absolutely. Well, next is a question from Vivian in Bellevue, and she asks, "What would be some good types of careers or work to pursue as an encore since I want to stop doing what I have been doing up until this point?" Well, thanks, Vivian, for asking that. So, it really does depend on your background. So, what is your skill set, your strengths? What are some interests that you might have? For example, if you have any type of sales background, business development background, you could look into some good encore careers like being an insurance consultant or broker or a realtor, getting into real estate or, property development, that type of thing. You could also, um, if your skill set is more, geared toward, customer service or finance or IT, you could look at perhaps working for a small business, small to mid-sized business could be another good way to go. Or you might say, okay, maybe I do want to start something independent. And then it's a matter of figuring out, what would make sense for your strengths and your skills to apply, just in a different way. So, what are those skills that are transferable, that are pretty universal? But, I know folks who, haven't let age stop them, that's for sure. I know people who started a franchise business in their 60s. And so, really just base it on what are your strengths and skills. And when you think about the type of work that you enjoy doing, what is that in terms of the tasks you've enjoyed? And, how might you be able to apply that? So, thanks for asking that one. And next is a question from Dan in Bellingham who asks, "How can I make the case for someone to hire me in my 50s when I seem to be hitting a brick wall with getting to later interview rounds and landing a job?" Thanks for so much for that, Dan. And sorry you're hitting the wall there. Again, it's the job search is never fun. I don't think. I like interviewing. I think sometimes interviews are fun, but going through the process to get them is not too fun. So, I would just really emphasize the benefits that you bring as an older worker. And those are things like stability. So, there's a myth out there that older workers will leave organizations quickly, not stay. And that's really not the case. So, on average, from what I've seen lately, on average, older workers stay about 3 times as longer as younger employees. So you can emphasize that your stability piece, the expertise that you bring, your ability and willingness to mentor other people, if that makes sense for you. That you're looking to stay active, engaged, the connections that you have from building your network over the years, and the commitment that you have, of course, as well as what attracts you to the role and organization. So, just some ideas there for you. But, Eric, what are your thoughts on these last couple questions?
Great questions,
Yeah.
of course, and eventually we'll all probably be asking these same questions, as time goes on. Um, but yeah, I think with somebody that's a little bit older, I think from a hiring perspective, there might be some worry that they're gonna, be too qualified, maybe too experienced for an entry
Yeah.
level thing, or maybe they feel like if it's not an entry level thing, like they might not have like the latest knowledge of stuff. So I think it really is a good idea to kind of point out, the skills that you do have and how you've been keeping up with the latest trends
Yeah.
and skills. And if you're interested in the entry level job, it is certainly, a good idea to say, look, I'm in this for the long haul, kind of thing. I'm
Yeah.
not, I have no plans to be here for a month or
Right.
something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Good points for sure. Well, thanks for that, Eric. And a reminder that if you have a career transition related question, you can email it to reignitingyou@gmail.com or leave me a voicemail at 360-436-6496. That's 360-436-6496. And I'll then answer it on a future show. Well, it's time for our first break. When we come back, I'll introduce our guest for the show, Laurie Nichols, who's here to share her story and talk with us about paving the way for retiring business owner exits and succession planning.
Are you feeling challenged or frustrated without a plan for what's next in your career and life? Are you seeing writings on the wall for needing to make a mid to late career change and don't know how or what to do? Coach Lisa Downs of New Aspect Coaching can guide you to what's next, providing a fresh perspective and supporting you to create a clear and compelling vision for your future and a plan to move forward. Call Lisa at 425-216-3015. That's 425-216-3015. New Aspect Coaching, fresh perspectives for your career.
Welcome back to Reigniting You, the show that focuses on all aspects of making mid to late career transitions. I'm your host, Lisa Downs. A note that you can catch the show Voices of Experience with host Paul Casey this Wednesday at 3 p.m. here on KIXI. Voices shines a light on people with experience in their fields of travel, public affairs, adventure, health, and fitness, with an emphasis on sustaining your own business. That's Voices of Experience, Wednesday at 3 o'clock. I'm happy to introduce today's guest, Laurie Nichols. Laurie empowers founders, leaders, and high potential successors to engage with purpose, urgency, and empathy to lay a foundation for the design and execution of a succession strategy that results in a mutually rewarding experience for all. Her people first approach is the foundation for succession planning with heart that focuses on a win-win for everyone involved. Laurie brings over 30 years of professional service firm leadership experience to her work at Laurie Nichols Coaching, including 20 plus years as managing partner in an independent investment management firm. After the sale of her business, she followed her passion to support business owners and leaders with crafting meaningful lives and legacies. Laurie is a certified professional coach, certified conversational intelligence coach, and a registered life planner. Hey, Laurie, great to have you here. Welcome to the show.
I am so happy to be here with you today, Lisa.
It's great. And, I always like to start with guests. A tradition here on the show is to learn about your career path and journey. So, what's the story of what's gotten you to this point in your career and how you got started?
Well, I always say that I'm a recovering CPA. So I actually started my career as an accounting major and just, banking, finance, pretty much the whole time since I graduated from college. In fact, I started in my first job as an auditor 2 days after my last class and was kind of in that world for quite a few years and worked my way from being an auditor in a bank to being a kind of more of an operations manager in an investment firm. And that's when I made this kind of shift from that more traditional accounting type of work into investments and sales and marketing and all kinds of functions within that investment firm. And that's where I was until about 9 years ago.
And to follow up on that, how did you decide to start your business and go into the coaching world?
Well, it's always been just kind of this. I don't know how to put it succinctly, but it's kind of this realization that after this number of years out of that kind of a role and in that more traditional work, realizing how fortunate I am to have made that leap when I did. And it was really just the kind of finding myself. So a lot of what you were sharing earlier in the show really resonates because they're, especially being I like to say a late baby boomer, I'll say we tend to stay in a role, in a position year after year after year, no matter what. And it was really the kind of the cost of that unconscious decision to stay and stay and stay and kind of grind it out. That was the kind of both catalyst and inspiration for doing what I do now.
Cool. And what would you say is a lesson or two that you learned along the way, in addition to that realization?
One thing was, I would say it's that never stop learning. When I made the leap from being an auditor, so that CPA accounting kind of work and background, into the investment arena, I didn't really have any knowledge of that industry or anything. And so that kind of drive to learn has served me well over the years. And then probably equally, if not more important, was this realization that people always matter. Relationships always matter. Earlier in the show, you mentioned the concept of it's like building rapport with people and people working with people that they know, like, and trust. And that is something that has just kind of been natural for me, and became that much more important after making this leap to having my own coaching practice and recognizing just how important that concept is, even for my clients who are business owners and planning for succession, and recognizing how that came into play during the transition. Like, I'll say before the transaction when we sold the company, but even more so during the transition. And it was like a huge change after. And so having that commitment to people matter, relationships matter, has always served me well.
That's great. That's a really nice philosophy. And kind of leads to my next question. And that is, what else did you find? What else have you found to be helpful for you, whether it was relationships or decisions you made, certain decision points, different junctures you got to, or, people who supported you, that really helped you get through change and transition?
I would say, it's like having kind of this, like a personal, like a well of, I don't know whether it's resilience or more perseverance, but it's just having that internal, more than discipline. It's just that the old expression was stick to itiveness, and just keep going even when things were difficult. And I would say that at times, there were times when I was still an owner in that business that were very, very difficult, tossed around by, the investment market returns and changes within the partnership team that I was working with, all kinds of things that went on. And having what I consider now to be this personal board of advisors, so really sounding board, that was trusted. And for the most part, they were also women who were in more entrepreneurial roles, whether they were attorneys that had their own practice. And just, there was probably about 7 of us at our peak, if you will. And that made a huge difference. Just having people that you could trust, that you can bounce ideas off. And if nothing else, just get encouragement from.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's just really leaning on that, on that network and those relationships and those people that you see, as you mentioned, that concept of having your own personal board of directors, so your different advisors and go-to people, really important, and so thanks for raising that, and I'm curious about too if there was ever a time when you regretted going down a certain road or regretted a career decision?
You know, as I reflect back, it's not so much a decision that I would say I regret. It's more the choices. It's kind of like the paths not chosen. It's more um, the determination, almost kind of taking control to just keep, I would say a lot of younger people use the expression, I'm just grinding. And I'm like, no, don't grind. But I just stayed at it and was just determined to kind of get through everything and didn't, it's kind of like when opportunities presented themselves for changes, whether it was changing firms, exiting the business at an earlier point in time, not making those choices, I don't regret necessarily. And yet that grinding it out, it took a toll.
Yeah.
It took a toll on me physically and mentally. And I feel like a lot of people get to a place of a certain level of what feels like success, and whether it's the money or whatever or however you define success, and it becomes so hard to kind of step back and say, but what do I really want? And so it's kind of like, again, just grinding it out without really being intentional and having purpose, is something that I wish I'd had more confidence at the time and trusted more that another path could have been possible. But I'm glad it came later than maybe it might have, but I did get there eventually.
That's good. That's okay. Yeah, I often think of, with that, I often think of Dory and Finding Nemo, right? With
Yeah.
just keep swimming, just keep swimming, swimming.
Mhm.
That's what we
Yeah.
gotta do sometimes, just keep swimming, right? Just keep at it. And for those who are going through career transition, it can be tough sometimes. And as you probably heard in a couple of the questions there
Mhm.
earlier, it can be frustrating. What do you recommend for someone who's going through a time of change and transition, just to stay positive and motivated and to get through this time period?
First of all, self-care. It's really thinking about what you need to do for yourself that feels like self-care, and that's different for everyone. My husband is a huge extrovert. I am not. So self-care for me was taking a lot of walks
Mhm.
outdoors, in nature was self-care for me. For him, it's going to be happy hour or meeting somebody for lunch, that kind of thing. But self-care is so important during times of change, especially if it's perceived as difficult change. The other thing is really investing the time and energy. It's kind of like the Stephen Covey um, quadrants from Seven Habits of Highly
Mhm.
Effective People. It's kind of an oldie but a goodie, where he talks about quadrant. I think it's quadrant 2, which is about self care. It's also like if you're thinking in a work context where you do your planning and just that kind of stuff. So if you're going through a period of change, the more you can invest time and energy into what is it that you really want to do, what is it that resonates with you about the potential for what's next, and it's getting comfortable with uncertainty. And whether you use a pad and pen to get your thoughts on paper, but it's bringing some intention to that, the planning and strategizing and connection strategy. it gets back to what you were talking about earlier too, how important it is to connect with people. And I would say especially like-minded people.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point. And wondering too, who in particular have been influences on you that have really contributed to who you are and your career to get you to this point?
You know, I would say probably there are a couple of coaches who were just so powerful and so inspiring that were teachers in the program that I went through. And I'm still learning from them. They do a lot of more advanced coach trainings and different things. And there's just something about not only the wisdom that they share, but it's just their energy, their joy for life, and being entrepreneurs and the kind of business that they run. And so I'd say that, I've been in their world in some form or fashion for probably about 6 years now. And they've really had just a huge influence on just how much I'm enjoying my work and enjoying life.
That's so cool. Yeah, I think it's so important that we have those coaches, right, in our lives. And even, you and I, we coach for a living, and then
Mhm.
also keeping in mind it's important that we have coaches too, right? So,
Yes.
just for support and to keep our skills sharp and everything else. So, but thanks so much, Lori, for sharing that and about your career journey and your lessons. Really appreciate it. And it's already time for our next break. So when we come back, Lori and I will talk about challenges business owners face with exiting and succession planning and much more. Hi, I'm Lisa Downs, career and retirement transition coach and host of Reigniting You on KIXI. I guide age 40 plus professionals to gain clarity, a renewed sense of purpose, and a career transition plan within 90 days so you can lead a fulfilling life regardless of your age. If you're not sure what's next for you, I can help. Let's talk about what your future can look like. Visit yournewaspect.com or call me at 425 216 3015. That's 425 216 3015. New Aspect Coaching, fresh perspectives for your career. Welcome back to Reigniting You, the show that focuses on all aspects of making career transitions for Gen Xers and Boomers. I'm your host, Lisa Downs. A reminder that if you'd like to get in touch, you can head on over to my website, yournewaspect.com. There you can download and take my free career transition readiness quiz. You can also sign up for my free weekly career tips e-newsletter, as well as drop me a note to get in touch. It'd be great to hear from you. That's yournewaspect.com. So we're here with succession planning consultant and coach Laurie Nichols. So Laurie, let's go ahead and jump back into our conversation. So as a succession planning expert, what are some of the key challenges you see with business owners when it comes to preparing to exit and letting go of their roles?
Number one, they do not start soon enough to just even think about it. I'll go back to Stephen Covey again, because he's a good one. But one of the 7 habits is begin with the end in mind. And if you are a business owner and you're, I would say, anywhere north of 45, it's not too soon to be thinking about, how you want to either, whether it's fully retire or just, possibly have an opportunity for a second career or a third career or something like that. But I would say that not starting soon enough. And the other thing too is not thinking enough about their people. And I'm not talking about just being nice or being a fun boss, that kind of thing, but it's really thinking about what kind of talent do they need to surround themselves with? So it's smart hiring, again, sooner rather than later, with an eye towards who is going to, if I want to sell this business, I need to have good people around me. If I'm selling it to a third party, if I want to do internal succession, I have to have good people around me that are going to be able to not just cash me out, but also run this thing. You know? And so I kind of see both of those things, not starting soon enough and not being thoughtful and intentional enough about their people strategy.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And it seems to me that some, yeah, could really get into that lone wolf type of mentality too, I would think.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because most of my clients are in a professional service capacity. So whether it's, you know, wealth management firm, I've got a more of a energy consulting firm as a client, a medical clinic. You know, there's just professionals that start a business. They've got a passion for the business. And most of my clients, they love their business. They love their work. And so it's just a matter of them not really recognizing. I always say it's kind of like they blow past the fork in the road that
Mm.
says you have to go from doer to leader or find some mix of the two. And it's not an easy transition for somebody that's
Yeah.
had a passion for the business and they have a lot of entrepreneurial energy, to now think about being a player coach.
Yeah.
They
I would.
the business still needs you to play, but we also need you to mentor and to be thinking about developing. And if you're not either interested or not in your mind good at it, who can you bring in to help
Yeah.
with that mentorship?
That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I would imagine it is a difficult transition for many business owners. And what would you say are additional aspects of business succession that many clients don't think about or plan in advance for?
Um, well, it kind of depends on the age that they're at. If they are late 50s or older, um, even if you're healthy, like feel like you're really, really healthy, you might be surprised by whether it's a health issue for yourself or somebody in your family. There's any number of things that can happen that are unexpected.
Yeah.
And not having at least the start of a plan. And again, if you don't have good people around you, it can be difficult. And so I always think of the importance of, even if it's not succession planning, it's starting to think about, what does continuity planning look like? What do I need to have in place? Just the basics, written procedures, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, when you think about it, being succession ready is really about just running a solid business.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you think about exiting leaders, what do you see in terms of their willingness and or ability in handing over the reins to younger leaders? What do you see as the different dynamics in play with that?
It kind of depends. I've seen those that they are ready and wanting to retire or to exit. And so, and the problem that a lot of them are faced with is that they didn't do the people preparation part,
Mm.
or the way they either structured their business, or just, time has gone by, and maybe the culture of their business is not that great. So they don't have a lot of longevity within their team. And so they end up kind of being held hostage by I'll put it this way, kind of the natural consequences of
Yeah.
how they've run the business, consciously or not, is kind of where they find themselves. I've known owners who are like in their early 60s and they really want to do some kind of internal succession and they don't have one person on their team
Mm.
that is a potential successor. But then I also see those that are probably the complete opposite end of the spectrum. They love the business, they love the work, and they literally think they're going to be able to do it indefinitely.
Mm.
And last I checked, most human beings do have an expiration at some point.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's kind of like it's not realistic, right? And so
Right.
those are two extremes, but I have to be candid that I see both of those extremes a lot.
Yeah. I mean, just because you want to doesn't mean that is how it will play out, right? It's like our bodies
Yeah.
and our minds do give out over time, and yeah,
And
I
it's
always
just,
say
and your clients are, it's like for people that as they get older too, it's like, especially if you're in a service business, your clients see you getting older too. And
yeah,
I think that's the other piece of it that gets overlooked is from a revenue perspective. Um, Anybody, whether it's somebody internally or externally buying your company, that, how well you've nurtured your client base and how stable your client base will be when you're gone matters. It
yeah.
matters in terms of the valuation of the business.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that takes thought and preparation to
Mhm.
ensure that there will be that continuity of clients.
Yeah. I would say dying at your desk is not a plan.
Not a good one.
A good one.
Not a good one.
Yeah, and, for, uh in thinking about, people who are exiting or selling a business, how is that, in your experience, a different transition from, say, leaving as an employee working for someone else?
You know, it's interesting because it depends on the kind of business. But if it's again a service business, which is the type that I came from and I work with now, oftentimes those transactions, the sale is paid for overtime.
Mm,
And so it's not like you're getting a check on your last day and say, see ya. And so there may be an expectation or even have it be part of the transaction that you will stay and be part of the business for a while to kind of facilitate, nurture, ongoing client relationships, that kind of thing. Whereas if you're an employee, if you give your notice and you exit, there's not generally that pull. And I
yeah,
would also say too that as a business owner, unless like in my case, I was really ready to exit when I left. Um, so I was really happy. So, for me, it was a wonderful, wonderful time. Some where they just love the business, it's really tough emotionally to let go
yeah,
because so much of, it's the classic thing of whether um, you've spent 30 years, 40 years at Boeing or you've been a business owner. If your identity's tied up with that,
yeah,
it's going to be a tough transition.
yeah. And, for many, I would assume that, they also would like to leave some sort of legacy. So how do you support clients with figuring out what they can do to leave a legacy with the business?
It kind of depends on the type of industry they're in, but it's like for a lot of my clients that are wealth managers or wealth management businesses, for them, it's like legacy is very important. And not always, but most of the time, legacy is important. Right now in the industry, there's a lot of M&A or mergers and acquisitions. And even within that, there are firms that are designing those transactions such that the owners are still a part of it and getting to kind of shape that legacy during the transition period. And for a lot of them, it's not just the name on the door, but it's knowing that that the people that they've been working with, the families they've been serving, that business will continue to serve maybe the next generation of their clients' families. And so there is like this, it's like in that kind of business in particular, it's personal.
Yeah.
The client relationships and just, the energy that you've put into building that business, because it is a business of relationships.
Mhm. For sure. And when you work with clients, what is your process to help them create a succession plan and have successful exits? What are the steps that you guide them through?
I look at it through the lens of win, 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 and helping my clients get a sense of what is their personal relative to succession. What is their personal win? What is a win for their team or the business? And what's a win for clients if it's a service oriented business? And just that shift or kind of a different lens that you're looking at your life and your business through, starting with yourself and what your win is a huge first step. Because for so many, if they've been, I'll use that word grinding again, if they've been grinding or just pushing and driving and building the business over decades, they haven't necessarily looked at things that way.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's another way of saying begin with the end in mind. And so I start with the business owner, helping them get clear on what is it that they're really trying to accomplish. And the next step is really important also, and that's what I call stakeholder interviews. It's so I will have personal, confidential conversations with the people who are stakeholders in that owner or partners or that business, being able to successfully navigate through what can be pretty tricky waters towards a successful exit or sale to a third party or internal succession. But that's a pretty important step, just figuring out what is on the minds. And I'll be also candid about the fact that it's really trying to get to what's on people's hearts. What do they really want, especially if you've got long-term employees? And it's really starting to get everybody comfortable with being more candid and being not allowing for assumptions and unspoken expectations to kind of take over, because it doesn't end well when a plan is in somebody's mind and it's based on their assumptions about what other people will or won't do, or expectations about what they will or won't do. And I've seen that come into play so much, and it's why it's such an important part of my process. Because when you talk to people following an exit or a transaction, the things that can blow it out of the water after the fact almost always are the things that did not get communicated. But that's kind of how it starts. And then from there, we work on identifying who are the internal stakeholders and what development plans are needed. Are there any operational things that could be impacting the team being succession ready? And then eventually it works its way into team coaching for those stakeholders or the leadership team, and then one-on-one coaching also for business owners and the successors.
Great. Thanks for sharing all that. And yeah, I imagine it can be a pretty meaty and also just tricky sometimes, to navigate those different scenarios. And what would you say is a client success story, whether it was helping a business owner to exit or from the succession planning perspective?
It's like there've been a few where it was really gratifying for me as a coach, being a part of the process, but it was liberating for the people involved in this particular scenario where you had a group of partners, and there were 2 out of the group that were ready and but felt so loyal to the other partners and the business, and it was really difficult for them to even kind of raise their hand and say, I'm I'm ready to go. And the pandemic was, I think of it as the pause that refreshed for some, in terms of, I'm really ready to go. And so my process really just helped get everything out on the table. Now it's like timelines are being said out loud, and just, that support to just get the ball rolling so that you can think in terms of what are the tangible steps that we could take. And that's what has come out of my work the last couple of years, is this idea of like a 12-month roadmap at minimum. We don't need to plan out 10 years, but let's just get 12 months planned out in terms of development ideas, people needing to learn new skills, or what can the owners start to delegate so people can get experience. But let's map it out. Let's get specific. And it's really made a difference.
Very cool. Nice. Well, Laurie, last question is, how can people find you?
You can either connect with me on LinkedIn, and it's just Laurie Nichols, and I have a personal account, not a business account, with LinkedIn, or email me at Laurie@laurienichols.com, or check out my website at laurienichols.com.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here and providing your insights and recommendations. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa. Really good to see you and be with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Laurie. And it's time to wrap up today's show. And that means it's also time for my reignition recommendation, your weekly career transition tip, regardless of your age. And my tip for you this week is to not let tunnel vision get in your way. So much of the time, we can have tunnel vision, thinking that we can only go a certain path, go down a certain road in our career, or figuring out what's next for us. And we can operate almost as if we have those classic blinders on and be laser focused on, well, I have to do what I've been doing because that's what I know. I know how to do this. And that's really not necessarily the case. Or, I only have these certain skills or only have these certain strengths. So I have to do this, go down this road. And that's not necessarily true. So broaden the perspective, broaden your horizons, really start with more of a clean slate to help get out of that tunnel vision. The old adage is true. You don't always have to do what you've always done. And if you are in career transition, it's a wonderful opportunity to take a look at some new avenues potentially. So don't let that tunnel vision get in your way. Just a reminder that if you'd like to get in touch, you can head on over to my website, yournewaspect.com. There you can download and take my free career transition readiness quiz, sign up for my free weekly career tips e-newsletter, or drop me a note. That's yournewaspect.com. So thanks, Eric, for your support today. What were your thoughts from what Laurie shared?
Oh, what a great conversation.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us have thought about being an entrepreneur or having our own companies, but I don't think that any of us that are in the dreaming mode anyway have really given much thought to secession and, retiring after that, and how to, even think about that or go through those steps. So just, well worth listening to, and would highly recommend anybody that has a company to go back and listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Absolutely. Well, join us next Monday at 3:00 when my guest will be veteran and military spouse advocate and consultant, Monica McNeil. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week on Reigniting You.